It's always the right time of year to save some money, and today we're going to be talking about another top 10 list, and this one is about the top 10 ways that you can save money using the cloud. I'm Dean Cifola, and this is the Azure Academy. So we have done a video in the past on governance and cost management, and I'll have that linked in the YouTube card up here. We're going to be looking at things that are in the Azure portal that everybody can take advantage of today. So let's jump over to the Azure portal and get started. So in order to begin saving in the cloud, first we have to understand what we're currently spending. So for that, we need to go to the cost management feature, and that is down here at the bottom in the tools section. And then cost analysis. And in the chart area, currently it's on accumulated, but I prefer to look at a daily view that's stacked. And then I could also break this down into something like resource groups. And there we go. Now we've got a resource group breakdown based on each day. And then we can see all of these color codes down here as to which resource group is having the most cost. So that's just a quick one, and you can see more in our cost management video about these charts and how to manipulate them. But there is a new feature here that I wanted to show you, and that is up here we have a try preview button. And when we do that, we can either look at this in a preview portal, or we can just select this button to turn on this new feature, and this will give us a new cost analysis home view. And we'll click close. Then we need to go off of this screen and come right back to it. So I'll just click on cost alerts and go back to cost analysis. And this is the new home view. Now the home view's function is to give you a view of those charts we were just looking at, but do it through a one-click easy button to get you to a specific set of data. So I could compare the last 3 months of what I've got going on in Azure, and I'll do that. And now I can see a breakdown of the last 3 months, and here are the services that we're breaking down by. So I can also use this drop down to go back to home or switch to another view. For example, daily cost. And this is doing a daily cost breakdown per subscription, and then giving us a forecast for what tomorrow is expected to bring, as well as the remainder of today. So that's understanding the current cost. Now that we understand that, we can find where our pain points are and things that we want to reduce. And the rest of our tips today are going to be about how we go about reducing those costs. Now, believe it or not, this is a conversation that Microsoft is very interested in you having. That may sound like a contradiction because, after all, we're the cloud provider. And as the cloud provider, isn't it in our best interest for you to spend as much money as possible? Well, actually, no. It's in our best interest that you spend as much money as necessary to get the greatest value out of the cloud as possible. Then you'll see how valuable of a resource that it is and how it can transform your business, which then will grow your business, and then you will then invest more into the cloud. So Microsoft is totally happy for you to take advantage of every benefit you can to cut costs, because then you're going to maximize what it is that you are getting value out of, which then in turn will make you happy with the cloud and make you want to invest more in the cloud. Microsoft is very much looking for the long partnership with customers rather than a short-term gain. So with that, let's jump into some tips. So the first thing is we'll go to our virtual machines, and as you can see here, our status for all of these VMs is stopped and deallocated. Right now, these VMs are not running. And believe it or not, this is actually our first money-saving tip, and that is power off your VMs when you don't need them running. This is a shift in mindset from how we've done things on-prem for decades, which is we paid a lot of money for this machine. We got it racked and stacked, and we're paying the electricity for it and the security and the cooling in the data center. We want to get the most out of this thing that we possibly can, so get stuff running on there, and it's running all the time, even though no one's actually using it. Nobody really cared because it had to be there powered on anyway. We couldn't just shut off servers and turn them back on all the time for a lot of reasons, one of them being convenience. So we just leave them running, and then we consequently have lots of VMs or servers that that are running that no one is actually using. Now in your on-prem data center, not really that bad. I mean, you are paying the cost of electricity, all of those ancillary costs to running this equipment. But in the cloud, this is really critical. If I don't need to have machines running and they are running and no one is using them, I'm paying for something that nobody is getting value from. Now, granted, this is my lab environment, so I can take all of my systems and power them off every single day. But you can take advantage of this same concept. So if you have dev environments, tests, QA environments, sandbox environments, they can all be shut off at a certain point, whatever works for you, so that you don't pay for those systems when no one is using them. Production, probably a different story. So to do this, we can just click on our VM, and then right down in the blade section here, we go to Auto Shutdown. Now, Auto Shutdown can be enabled right from here on all of your VMs, and this can also be done as part of your build, which I'll show you in a moment. But you can turn that on, set the particular time that you want these to shut off, set your time zone, and whether or not you want an email notification or to set up a webhook on those, and then hit save. So this VM will now shut down automatically every day at 11 p.m. So even if I forget to power it off at the end of my day, the VM will shut off automatically, so it's not running all night long and costing me money without giving me a benefit. Let's go back here and let's go to create a new VM. And when you get through the process to the management tab, then if we scroll down, we have that auto shutdown right here, which you can turn on, set your time zone and time that you want the VM to shut off and whether or not you would like to be notified. Okay, so those are in the creation experience, which means that you can do them in your automation. So in your ARM templates, PowerShell, CLI, Ansible, whatever it is that you use, you can turn on those features as well. Now that brings me quickly into the second thing that we can save some money on, and we'll go back to the basics tab for this, and that is under VM sizes. Now, when we bought those servers that we had on-prem, we didn't necessarily have a specific workload in mind all the time, and it was more about get a machine that was big and powerful and could do whatever it is that we needed it to do for the foreseeable future. In the cloud, not so much. We want to make sure that we're right sizing our workloads. So for example, if I sort this by cost and we just say, well, our standard VM is DS3 V2, and we look at the total cost, that's $217.99 a month according to street pricing. And that VM will have 4 CPU and 14 gigs of RAM and can hold up to 16 disks. Now, that may have been the size of your average server that you bought on-prem, but in the cloud, your average computer that's running a single workload is not going to need that much hardware. So you should be aware of how many CPU cores, how much memory that you need for that particular workload, as well as the maximum number of IOPS, which is your disk performance, so that you can right size the workload, because the difference in cost between that DS3 V2 and D2S V3 that has half the hardware is $136.15. Right sizing your VMs is critical to controlling your cost in the cloud. Now, one more thing I want to show you under the VMs here, and you can see that we are in the central region, and this is item number 3 on our list. So we're in the central region here, and we'll click our sizes. And then the size that I like to use a lot is B2MS, because you get a lot of bang for your buck. And this one costs $74.25 in the central US region. Now watch what happens if I change this to East US. We go back to change size, B2MS costs $61.90. So what I'm pointing out here is that there are different regions in the cloud, and those resources in those regions sometimes have different costs associated with them. You don't want to have to click through each one of these screens to have to find all that information, so we've made it rather easy by creating the Azure Calculator. So I've just opened up Bing and searched for the Azure Calculator, and that's our first link. And then we can click on virtual machines or whatever else we're interested in. And then we can go down to the section here, and then we see our costs. So let's find our B2MS. And this is pricing for West US, and we can change this, of course, to Central. And when we do, we see that we have a different price per hour to use this VM. Again, if we change to North Europe, then we've got a different price again. So you can use the calculator to determine what your cost is going to be per region. Now, you may have no choice in what region you end up using. You may have another business reason that forces you into a particular region, but it is something to be aware of, that if you can get into a region that has fewer costs associated with the resources you want to use, that will only be to your advantage. And this leads us real neatly into Azure Reserved Instances. And reserved instances basically give you a cost break by telling us in advance that you plan on using these resources over a longer period of time. So if we scroll down a little bit here, we can see that you can reduce costs up to 72% compared to pay-as-you-go pricing. And you can even combine this with another feature, which we'll talk more about in a second, called the Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. And if we scroll down a little bit more, we see that this applies not only to VMs, but also to databases and storage. So if you're interested in one of these, then you can click on the link here to find out more information about it. But let me show you how to actually execute this. So I've got a different environment here, and I'll click reservations at the top. And when we do, we can hit purchase now. And then we have all the different options that we can choose to purchase in advance. Now, when we do this, we click on buy. And after a few seconds of analysis, the chart will show up here. Now, this analysis works based on what you've already used in your cloud, as well as how long they've been running. Now, in this particular environment, I don't have anything running, so I've got a recommended quantity of 0. But you can see that you have a billing frequency here of upfront or monthly. Upfront pricing means that I will select this VM and then it will calculate my price for 3 years of running this VM. And you can see that the upfront cost for 3 years of a VM running in the cloud with 1 CPU and half a gig of memory is $59 with an estimated savings of 62%. That sounds pretty awesome, but let's look at my B2MS for 3 years. Now, to run this VM 24/7 for the next 3 years, which is a VM with 2 CPU and 8 gig of RAM, is $950. Now, I can also do this based on a month to month. So if you look at B2MS for reserved for 1 year monthly, then that is $41, estimated savings of 41%. So you can see how this basically works. And then once you're happy with it, you hit select. Then it gives you your breakdown here, and you can view your full payment schedule as well. You can see $41 every month for the next year. And then you can hit your review and buy. Now let's talk about the Azure Hybrid Use Benefit as our next way to save some money. And for that, we need to have a VM with a Windows image selected. And then we can scroll down to the bottom of the first page here, and we see save up to 49% with the Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. Now, in order to take advantage of this, we need to understand a little more about it. So we can hit learn more. And that brings us to our Azure documentation. To sum it up for you, basically, if you have software assurance as part of your licensing agreement with Microsoft, then you can check that box back in the Azure portal to yes, and then confirm that you do indeed have a server license, in this case with software assurance, and then that will remove the cost of the Windows license from this particular VM. Getting back to the docs here, the other thing that's helpful in here is, well, what if I already have a bunch of VMs deployed? How can I turn this benefit on? And then you can scroll down, you can find some code for building new VMs with hybrid benefit turned on, as well as some PowerShell for how to update existing systems, or you can also do that through the CLI. So between reserved instances and the hybrid use benefit, you can reduce your cost of your Windows VMs in Azure by over 80%. And that brings me to another feature, which is a new one in the cloud. And if we scroll back up a little bit here, we can see Azure Spot Instance. Okay, and you can mouse over the tooltip to learn more about Spot instances. So let's open that. Now, spot instances have to do with in the moment pricing. And what I mean by that is what you're basically doing is taking advantage of some unused capacity in Azure in order to run a VM or VM scale set. Now, this can help you to save 90% compared to your pay-as-you-go prices. Now, this will be heavily dependent on what else is going on, the time of day, all those kind of things. So in the middle of the night for your particular region is probably when you have the best advantage of spot pricing. And if we scroll down here, we can see recommended workloads. These should be low priority VMs and VMs that can specifically handle interruptions. They don't need to have a specific SLA or time frame that they need to have something done by. They're more for like HPC or batch processing, dev test labs, those kind of things, or stateless applications. Those are good instances for spot because the VM can be deallocated if demand requires it. Okay, so that's the trade-off here. You get very high discount for using some of our capacity, which was unused, because we want to get the most out of what we're doing in the cloud. If we need that capacity, then we will reclaim these spot-priced VMs. So back in the Azure portal, to enable this, you just select yes, and then you have to choose which model you want to use. And those two models are capacity only or price and capacity. So for the capacity only model, this is when demand in the cloud requires us to reclaim the VM, or you can do it by price and capacity. And then you can list a certain dollar amount here that you want to have for your VMs. And then once we exceed that due to demand, then we will evict your VM so that you do not have those costs anymore. So that's a way to put a good cap on your cost of these particular workloads. So another great tool that you can use in the cloud for helping you to understand your cost is back here on the home screen. I've got it here up at the top, but you can find it also under more services at the top here, and that is the Azure Advisor. Now, we have done a video on the Advisor as well, so I'll have that linked up in our YouTube card. And you can see the Advisor breaks down into 5 areas, one of them being cost. I've already followed all the recommendations in this section, but I can see a whole list of them in the documentation. The benefit of the Advisor is that it will show you which resources are being impacted by these items. We have resources that are orphaned, so to speak, sitting out there running, costing us money. Deallocate those resources, delete those resources, clean up the cloud so that you're not paying for things that you're not really using. Take a look at that and take advantage of some of those things as well. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at something that I bet you're going to be shocked to find out is actually here in the cloud. So up at the top search bar, we're going to type the word free. And we're going to click on free services. And look at that. There are a tremendous amount of free services that are here in the cloud. And you can take advantage of them. If you're just getting started with the cloud and you need a space to call a sandbox and play around, you can definitely take advantage of all of this. And with that, the last one that I'll walk you through today is DevTest Lab. Now, one of the beauties about DevTest Lab is it is either free or greatly reduced in cost compared to regular pay-as-you-go, but these are not meant for production use. So you're going to have a limited amount of SKUs and configurations that are here, but we can add a new resource here by choosing Add. Then we can see a very long list of items that we can choose from, or we can do a search at the top. And I will choose a Server 2019 Data Center Gen 2 VM, and it pre-allocates my VM and username. If you don't like those, you can change them. And then you can choose to save your password as your default, so that'll become your saved secret for the next time. And then you choose your VM size, and I'll choose my faithful B2MS. And then I'll set this for standard SSD. And then to help us with some quick configurations, we can add artifacts to these VMs. And if I move the name bar over here, you can see what it is that we've got. We can have Chrome installed or PowerShell, create a pipeline, and many, many more, as you can see. So I'll choose to create this as a domain. And then when I do, it'll ask me for a domain name. and I'll put in a password and hit add. And then I also want to install VS Code on here and also install PuTTY. We'll hit OK. We see we've got 3 artifacts selected, and then we can hit create and start building this environment. So I'm not going to go through the whole build at this point. If you're interested in seeing more about DevTest Labs, give me some comments down below and tell me that you'd like a video on DevTest Labs so we can get more into this, because there is a lot of stuff here as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed looking at some money saving tips in the cloud. It's always good to save some money, and you can take advantage of all of these things that we've talked about today in your Azure subscription. And again, Microsoft is very interested in you saving to get the best value from the cloud as you can, because that'll make you a happier customer, and happier customers become return customers. So if there's any way that we can improve Azure and cost saving measures, please do give me some comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you thought that this was a good video, give me a thumbs up, as well as click that subscribe button and join us here at the Azure Academy community, as we're all just trying to learn about Azure and help everyone out. And if you'd like to receive an email notification when our new videos come out, which is roughly once a week, you can click the bell notification for that. So thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you in the next video. Happy learning.